The rain hammered against the veranda roof, a relentless percussion against the tense silence. Jedediah Stone watched Elias Thorne, a man drowning in grief and expensive tearing, shift uncomfortably in the armchair. The ruby glinted dully on the steps leading down from the veranda, a silent accusation. "You say you hired him to scare your brother," Jedediah said, his voice raspy. "Just a scare. A warning." Thorne swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. Silas was delving into things he shouldn't have. Mining claims, relocation disputes. He was stirring up trouble. "And you thought the hired thug would resolve it?" "He was expediting the process." Thorne avoided Jedediah's gaze, focusing on a spot on the rain-slicked stones. Silas wasn't always reasonable. He antagonized people. He needed to be reminded of the consequences. Clem stood a few paces back, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver, watchful. The unnamed woman, pale and drawn, remained almost invisible in the shadows of the veranda's corner, her eyes fixed on Thorne. Jedediah felt her gaze sharpen, knowing the silent counterpoint to Thorne's carefully constructed facade. "The man in the hat," Jedediah continued, "he left town before dawn. No forwarding address, no discernible connections, just a handful of dollars and a job done. He left the observation hang in the air, a subtle pressure. He's a ghost, just like Silas." Thorne flinched. "I paid him a fair price for a service rendered. I have no idea where he went." "And Silas? Where was *** going?" Jedediah leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on Thorne's. He was looking into something beyond just a few displaced miners. Something bigger, something that reached further than Copper Canyon. Thorne's hands trembled as he reached for a glass of whiskey on a nearby table. He took a long swallow, the liquor doing little to soothe the anxiety etched on his face. He was obsessed with the past, obsessed with rumors. Silas always believed in conspiracies. "Conspiracies exist," Jedediah said softly. "The question is whether they're rooted in reality or the fertile ground of paranoia." The unnamed woman stood in the shadows. Jedediah caught a fleeting glimpse of her lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He felt a prickle of unease. She knew more than she was letting on. He'd noticed her at Silas's ransacked study. He hadn't confronted her, not yet. But he knew she held a piece of the puzzle. Silas was investigating shipping manifests. Jedediah pressed. Illegal shipments. Goods passing through the territory under false pretenses. And he was getting close to someone powerful. Thorne's eyes darted to the rain, then back to Jedediah. He seemed to shrink into the armchair, the expensive fabric doing little to shield him from the weight of his own guilt. "He was a fool," Thorne whispered. "A self-righteous fool." "And what about the ruby?" Jedediah asked, nodding toward the steps. "Why was it at the scene? Silas didn't possess it. It's quite valuable." Thorne paled even further. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it, struggling to maintain his composure. "It belonged to a client," he stammered. "Silas was acting as a finder, a middleman." "The smuggler, you mean," the unnamed woman said, her voice a low murmur from the shadows. Thorne glared at her, his expression hardening. "Mind your own business." "My business is observing," she replied, her voice devoid of emotion. "Silas's ledger mentioned the ruby being delivered to New Orleans, to a man named Moreau, a known associate of Madame Evangeline." Jedediah's gaze sharpened. Moreau, Evangeline. The names were whispers in the dark corners of Copper Canyon's underbelly, echoes of a dangerous web of illicit trade. Silas hadn't just been looking at shipping manifests. He's been delving into the heart of a far more sinister operation. "Moreau is known to move goods in and out of the port of New Orleans," Jedediah said, his voice flat. "What was Silas shipping?" Thorne looked away, his silence a confession. "I don't know," he said finally, his voice barely audible above the relentless drumming of the rain. Suddenly, a thunderclap rattled the house, momentarily drowning out the sounds of the storm. When the echoes subsided, the unnamed woman spoke again, her voice even quieter than before. "Beware," she said, her gaze fixed on Jedediah. "The Queen of Spades has been delivered." Jedediah felt a chill run down his spine. The Queen of Spades. The card. Silas's last communication before his death. A warning. A threat. He recalled the cryptic message scrawled on the back to beware. He looked at Thorne, then at the rain-soaked veranda, then at the unnamed woman, whose face remained unreadable in the shadows. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his gut, that Silas's death was not an isolated incident. It was a link in a chain, a ripple in a tide of secrets and lies that threatened to engulf Copper Canyon. The rain continued to fall, washing away the pretense of normalcy, leaving behind a residue of dread and the unsettling feeling that the darkest chapters were yet to be written. He knew his work was far from over. Silas's investigation hadn't ended. It had only just begun, and he was the one tasked with uncovering the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be,